You're listening to the Fort Erie Podcast, your local source for upcoming events, hot new listings, and bite-sized interviews with business and community leaders. Here's your host, Brent Jones.
Good morning, Fort Erie. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 3 of the Fort Erie Podcast. I'm your host, Brent Jones, and it is Tuesday, September 28th, 2021. Today, my guest is going to be Ann Waters from Salvation Army Community and Family Services here in Fort Erie. But first, I wanted to mention a couple of you asked me about last week's episode, right after the federal election, why I didn't comment on the election, why leading up to the election I didn't mention any of our local candidates or local MPs who are running. And it's because I've always endeavored to keep this show relatively free of politics unless it directly relates to the town of Fort Erie. So that's why this is not your source for matters pertaining to the federal election. But anyway, let's get right into today's episode. A quick reminder, of course, each new episode this fall, I am giving away a $50 gift certificate to redeem at Lucky Strikes. If you'd like to win the gift certificate that I am giving away today, head on over to theforteriepodcast.com, click on today's episode and scroll down to where the section is to leave comments. Leave me a comment either about today's episode or, a joke or something you'd like to share with me, an upcoming community event. You can comment anything. My favorite comment this week wins. It's really that simple. Get yourself a $50 gift certificate. Go bowling at Lucky Strikes. So let's take a look and see what's making news in Fort Erie this week. So first story, coming up in just 2 days on September 30th, the public is invited to join the Indigenous community at the Fort Erie Native Friendship Center for a walk to honor residential school victims and survivors. So this, of course, coincides with the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Jennifer Dockstader, who you may recall was previously a guest here on the Fort Erie Podcast. She's the executive director for the Friendship Center and stated that we're all going to be wearing our orange shirts specifically to honor the children. You can get more details about this event if you'd like to partake. Links in the show notes below this episode for the complete news story. The second story I've got for you here has to do with the Crystal Beach Farmers Market, which just wrapped up this past Sunday, September 26th, and in style, I might add, with a tea party following the market, tea, baked goods, coffee, and an invitation to wear big crazy hats. The crazier and more extravagant, the better, I suppose. For those of you who don't know, this year marks the 100th anniversary of Crystal Beach itself, and for a growing farmers market in that community, vendors interested in taking part in next year's market can, I'm not going to read out the email, but you can click the link to the news story in the show notes below this episode. There's an email address here where if you are interested in participating next year, you can send an email for more information. All right, I've got a hot new listing for you this week, brought to you by yours truly, Brent Jones with Remax Niagara Realty. I'm talking about my latest listing at 543 Walden Boulevard. This property has 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, has 105-foot frontage. It would be ideal for a growing family. The basement is partially finished with an outstanding, very impressive theater room. It's got a detached 2-car garage and a second outbuilding with a bar for a little grown-up entertaining as well as a workshop. You can contact me directly for a private viewing or by checking out the show notes below this episode. And as a reminder, you've probably either got a postcard in the mail or you've seen it in the newspaper at this point, or you've heard me talk about it. But everyone who buys or sells residential real estate in Niagara with me this fall goes into a draw in January to win a $3,000 gift certificate to redeem at sell-off vacations. The gift certificate can be redeemed now. It can be redeemed in the future when travel restrictions loosen. Totally up to you. But for more information on that, either check out the link in the show notes below this episode or head on over to buywithbrent.ca/vacation. All right, let's check in with Fort Erie questions and answers, the Facebook group this week. See what's on your mind, Fort Erie. Brandy says, I'm looking for an indoor activity for my 2.5-year-old son for the winter months. There were a couple of different answers, but the most popular one that came up was Fort Erie Fantastic Gymnastics. And again, some of you may recall Sarah Morin, who's the owner of Fort Erie's Fantastic Gymnastics, was a guest on a previous episode of this podcast. Sherry says, I'm looking for someone to make a birthday cake for an 8-year-old girl. And the top response so far to that question is Artistic Sweets here in Fort Erie. All right, I think that just about concludes what's going on this week. Now on to my interview with Ann Waters. All right, welcome back to the show, folks. I am joined right now by Ann Waters of Salvation Army Community and Family Services here in Fort Erie. Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
I appreciate you talking with me today. Let me start by asking you the same question I ask all my guests, which is what makes Fort Erie such a great place to live and work?
For me, it's the generosity of the community. I've been here since 2010, and this town never fails to overwhelm me with the generosity towards their fellow community members.
I absolutely would agree. But let's clear this up for listeners, because I feel like when I jump on some of these like Fort Erie Facebook groups, I see conflicting answers. Is the thrift shop open? Will it be open this fall? Are you accepting donations again at Salvation Army?
Okay, and there is a lot of confusion between us and the thrift store. We are both run by the same officers. However, we are separate entities.
Okay.
They are open currently, speaking to you in the early fall when I am. They are currently open, and they are accepting donations of small household goods and clothing. They're not currently taking furniture.
Well, I think when most people think of Salvation Army, the first thing they think of is thrift shopping. But obviously, your organization provides a lot of other services to the community, maybe that people are less familiar with. Could you talk a bit about some of those additional services?
Sure. There are two things that we're probably best known for. First and foremost, being Christmas assistance.
Right.
Each year, we help families who maybe aren't able to provide the Christmas they hope to for their families. So we provide food, we provide toys in conjunction with the Kinsman's Gift of Love. And last year, it was about 300 children who got a really good Christmas because of the donations from the community. The other thing that we're probably best known for is our food bank. We run a food bank here throughout the year, and it's run all through COVID. We're open Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 12 until 3:30. People are welcome to come once a month for any food assistance that they need. But then we also have our programs that people may not be as familiar with. We assist with utility support. So if people are in arrears or disconnected from gas, water, or hydro, we have funding that's been set aside by different agencies that allows us to provide assistance for those people and either maintain or reconnect their services. We also run tax clinics through Canada Revenue's CVITP clinics. And we've been able to bring, last year it was over $2 million into the pockets of the people in this community that they may not have otherwise gotten had they not filed their taxes.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it's all volunteer driven. Everybody who prepares the taxes is a volunteer. We have a very good core of volunteers who work with us in that. Coming up this fall, somewhere around the end of September, the region has selected our facility to host a mobile doctor. So the doctor will be here Mondays from 1 to 4 in the afternoon in our parking lot in a mobile doctor's office. So people can come whether they have a health card or not and see a primary care physician. So we're very excited about that program getting up and going.
That's very cool. That's cool. Well, you mentioned the food bank a moment ago, and that the food bank remained open and active throughout the pandemic. Did the pandemic increase demand on the food bank?
It was kind of an interesting dynamic of what happened because of Niagara Nutrition Partners and groups that provide funding for school lunches. Normally, they were still providing gift cards to families in need. So we saw a real decrease in our number of families with school-aged children, but we saw an increase in adult-only families or singles. So our numbers have remained pretty constant, but once the kids are back in school and the funding goes away from the families because it's put back into the schools, I think we'll see a real spike coming up this fall.
Okay. So for those, looking to donate, to get involved, I'll put links in the show notes below this episode. Obviously, you accept food donations, I'm assuming, pretty well all year, or is it still Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or how does that work?
Any Monday through Friday, any day between 9 and 4. There should be staff in the building, and we accept food at any time. If it's a perishable, then it would have to be something out of a garden. Like right now, we have a lot of gardeners bringing things in. Things like meats, we can't really accept because we don't know how they've been handled. So for the safety of our clients, public health kind of doesn't like us doing that type of thing. But dry goods, canned goods, definitely year round, we're always more than grateful to accept them.
And food donations go to the building on Gilmore. Is that right?
It is. We also have a bin in Sobeys that people can drop things there.
Right. Okay. Well, how did you first get involved with Salvation Army, Anne? And what does your role involve on a day-to-day basis?
I started off in 2010. I applied to be the kettle coordinator to run the Christmas kettles.
Oh, okay.
And I got the job. I found out later I was the only applicant, but I've been here ever since. I did 3 years as kettles, but kind of did contracts and volunteering in between. Eventually got hired part-time and then full-time. And then in the spring of 2017, I became the manager.
Oh, wow. Okay. Very cool. Well, let's just kind of to conclude things, you talked a bit about, donations to the thrift shop. Obviously, people from the community could donate food. What other ways could Fort Erie community members get involved? Are there volunteering opportunities? I mean, how else could people support Salvation Army in our community?
We are always very grateful to have volunteers. But again, with the pandemic, we've really had to be very careful. We totally restricted it for a while to the people who are currently volunteering. We are starting to open up the volunteer opportunities a bit more again. So if they were to contact me directly, I can give them the paperwork to sign out to volunteer. I mean, we have yard work, kitchen work once we get up and going, working in the food bank, admin assistance. So there are a number of ways that people could utilize their skills and abilities to help us out.
Excellent. Okay, that's great. Well, I want to thank you so much, Anne, for spending some time with me today.
Thank you very much.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Just to wrap up, to conclude today's episode, I have a few community events that I want to mention. The grand opening of the Crystal Ridge Dream Center, of course, in Crystal Beach, 385 Derby Road. That is happening today from 3 until 8 p.m. Anyone in the public is welcome to come out and celebrate. Coming up on Thursday, September 30th, there will be music trivia night with Ryan at Casa Hugo. This happens every Thursday, of course, but it's back. It's free to play, but you need to have a reservation. Check out the details in the show notes below this episode. This is kind of neat. This almost falls into almost like a news story, but on Monday, October the 4th, Fort Erie Transit on Demand is launching. Some of you may recall that I spoke in a previous episode with Julie Brady from Regional Limousine. It appears that Regional Limousine will be spearheading that effort. Get a ride really anywhere in town for $3 starting next Monday. And just lastly, this is also happening next Monday, October the 4th, kicking off at 11:30 a.m. My team, the Rosatani Real Estate Group, will be hosting its 7th annual Why Not Golf Day at Bridgewater Country Club. I believe all the spots to golf have already been taken up, but there's some very cool prizes. You can certainly check out the link in the show notes below this episode and reach out and see if we might still be able to get you or a foursome into play. I think that does it for community events this week. Join me next week, folks, for a brand new episode of the podcast. My guest will be Jen McCready from Lady Luck Photography Studio in Ridgeway. So long for now.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie Podcast with your host, Brent Jones, a sales representative with RE/MAX Niagara Realty Limited Brokerage. Follow @BuyWithBrent on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates. Subscribe to the Fort Erie Podcast on popular platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and catch a new bite-sized episode every week. Until next time.